Holmes, case number 12CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys, and his attorneys are Ms. Brady, Mr. King, Ms. Nelson, Ms. Higgs, and Ms. Spengler. The prosecution is represented by Mr. Brockler, Mr. Edson, Ms. Stitch McGuire, Ms. Pearson, and Mr. Orman. We are outside the presence of the jury. There are some things I want to chat with you about before we start. I defer ruling on exhibits P-TR-2074 and 2075. Has the defense had an opportunity to look into those exhibits? And I gave the defense some time to look for exhibits that they felt would render these two exhibits cumulative. Ms. Spengler?
I have, Your Honor. I just don't, if I may approach and look at those exhibits so I get the right number.
Could you get those, please? They're P-TR-2074 and 2075.
I can tell the court that the exhibit that shows the angle or the entryway of the theater that's shot from the inside of the theater.
That's 2074.
Okay. I would argue that People's 2770 depicts what is shown in the exhibit in question, as well as a video that we saw on Thursday of the crime scene. And then regarding the proposed exhibit that is shot outside of the theater, I have a number of exhibits, Your Honor, that have already been introduced that, in my estimation, would be cumulative or depict the same, essentially the same scene. That would be 2188, 2190, 2191, 2192, 2198, and that's all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking at 2770, P-TR-2770, Ms. Spengler. I think you must be referring to this being, or this rendering P-TR-2075 cumulative, not 2074. And I know that you didn't have them in front of you, and so I understand that. Have any response?
Your Honor, I haven't had a chance to look up the photos so far, but 2770 doesn't look anything like the photos, either one of the photos that I submitted to the court. I'll need to look at the rest of them.
Okay.
So I would note 2770 is shot further into the theater and doesn't address the entryway to the exit door. And were the other numbers, because these aren't showing up the right photos?
Actually, now that I've looked at the other photographs, it does appear that Ms. Spengler was referring to, or was intending to argue that P-TR-2770 renders P-TR-2074 cumulative, but the fact that I was confused tells you that it's not, that assertion is not correct. It does not render it cumulative. 2074 is very different from 2770. So I find that the previous admission of 2770 does not render 2074 cumulative or part of the unnecessary presentation of evidence that is cumulative under Rule 403, and I find that the probative value of the photograph of 2074 is not substantially outweighed by any of the dangers listed in Rule 403. So the objection as to P-TR-2074 is overruled. The objection as to P-TR-2075 is sustained because I find that there are several pictures that depict this area very well, and this would constitute under Rule 403 the unnecessary presentation of cumulative evidence, and I find that the probative value of this photograph is substantially outweighed by that unnecessary presentation of cumulative evidence. So I'll sustain the objection as to 2075, but the objection as to 2074 is overruled. So 2074 is admitted, 2075 is not. Ms. Pearson, you may approach so that you can retrieve 2075, and then you can mark it as a court trial exhibit. What number are we up to now? 60, C-TR-60. Choice. The instruction that I intend to give the jury in terms of exhibit P-TR-1227 is as follows. Members of the jury, any statements in the emails that are part of exhibit P-TR-1227 that were made by someone other than the defendant are not being admitted for the truth of the content of those statements. Rather, they're being admitted for the limited purpose of placing the defendant's statements in context and making the defendant's statements intelligible. You should not consider these statements for any other purpose. And my recollection is that the defense requested that I give the jury an instruction pursuant to Rule 802 when exhibit P-TR-1227 is admitted. Is the defense okay with the instruction that I just read?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Does the defense want an instruction related to the redactions to 1227? I know that in the past I have offered to give the jury an instruction with respect to redactions made to evidence, and I'm offering it again. Here is a sample of an instruction that I could give the jury, although I'm open to suggestions for different language, different phrasing, or a different instruction altogether. But here's one that I would propose, although again I'm not tied to it. Members of the jury, exhibit P-TR-1227 has been admitted with redactions. You are instructed that you are not to draw any inferences from those redactions. You should not guess or speculate about the redactions or about the reasons for the redactions. All redactions have been made by the court based on the applicable rules of evidence and other rules of law. Does the defense want a redaction instruction with respect to exhibit P-TR-1227, whether it's the one that I just gave or something different?
Your Honor, I expect that exhibit will be introduced on probably Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday of this week. If I may have a little bit of time to think about that.
Yes, let me know. I'll leave it to you to remind me if you want me to give it. If you do not ask for it, then I will infer from that that you do not want any redactions instruction.
Okay.
And again, I have been doing this throughout the trial whenever an exhibit has been admitted with redaction. So I'll leave it up to you. If you want me to give one, I will give one. If you prefer that I not give one, then I won't give one. And if you don't say anything more between now and the time when it's admitted, then I'll infer from that, I'll infer from your silence that you're not asking for one and that in fact, your preference is that I not give one, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Your Honor, can we get a copy of the court's instruction that the court just read?
Yes, I'll get that to you during the break, okay? On Exhibit P-TR-800, Mr. Orman, are the people thinking at this time that they are going to attempt to introduce it through someone else, or?
Plans tomorrow morning.
Okay, great. So I'll table that. Does the defense have a request related to order C-205 that was issued late Friday and the record that we made at the bench right after actually, I issued the order on Friday, but the record that we made at the bench was right after the lunch break on Thursday?
We do, Your Honor, if we
All
may
right.
approach.
Yes.
And, Your Honor, we'll be objecting to this being at the bench. We'd prefer that this be in open court.
Okay, well, let's have it at the bench first, and then we'll see where that takes us. All right, thank you, thank you. The next item on my list is the defense's request to dismiss juror 901, and the prosecution has indicated that it has no objection, so let me rule on that. I'm going to go ahead and grant that request, and so I'm going to release juror number 901 for the following reasons. She indicated that her brother-in-law was the victim of a random shooting. He was apparently shot 3 times on June 9. In this case, as I think the defense indicated, involves a random shooting. Number 2, she became emotional when she talked about the incident to me. So this is an incident that evoked an emotional reaction in her. Number 3, she asked for permission to visit her brother-in-law in the hospital, indicating to me that we're not dealing with a distant relative. It appears to be a relative that she is at least somewhat close to, and that she cares about, even if the person with whom she is close or is her sister and not necessarily her sister's husband, the concern remains. Number 4, based on the information that she has provided, it appears that her brother-in-law was the victim of an alleged crime and that there may be an ongoing investigation about that incident. I have some concerns about that because she's a juror in a criminal trial that involves a law enforcement investigation of a random shooting that resulted in numerous victims being killed or injured. And I understand that the shooting of the brother-in-law apparently happened in Denver and involves the Denver Police Department. And I don't know if we have any witnesses in this case that are members of the Denver Police Department, but the Denver Police Department in some ways played a role in responding to the theater after the shooting and or to the defendant's apartment. And in any event, we're dealing with law enforcement in this case, and so that causes some concerns for me. And then finally, I know that juror 901 told me that she could still be fair and impartial in this trial, but I have some ambivalence about the reliability of that representation because I don't believe that she was completely candid and forthcoming with me the first time that she talked to me about this, which was at approximately 1:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday, June 10. And I thought more about this over the weekend. When she spoke with me that afternoon, she told me that her brother-in-law had been involved in an accident during the early morning hours of that day, and that it was all over the news, and that she was aware of the news reports. The next day, on June 11, she sent me a note and told me that she had learned additional details about her brother-in-law's accident and wanted to tell me the truth about the incident. She then indicated that her brother-in-law had been the victim of a shooting in Denver. I should note that several news agencies reported around 6 in the morning on June 10, that's Wednesday, that there had been a shooting in Denver and that the Denver Police Department was investigating the incident. That was the only shooting that I saw reported in the news on June 10 in Denver, and there was no mention that initially this was believed to be an accident of some sort and that later authorities determined that it was a shooting. Given what Juror 901 said about the incident involving her brother-in-law, at least initially, and given that she told me it was all over the news and that she was aware of the news reports, I believe the incident that she was referring to was the one reported by several news agencies around 6 in the morning on June 10. But I also believe that Juror 901 knew by 1:30 in the afternoon that day, when she first talked to me, I think she knew that this was a shooting. If for no other reason that she stated that she was aware of the news reports about it. I don't know what her motivation was for being less than forthcoming with me that first day, and I don't need to determine that. It's possible that she may have told me it was an accident for fear that disclosing that this was a shooting may get her dismissed from the jury. It's possible that it was something else. What I will note, though, is that in her written statement from June 11, she went out of her way to tell me that this incident would not take her full focus away from her duty in this case, and that she knew that she could still be fair and impartial. And by the way, she emphasized the word no by underlining it. She then said that she was hoping she could stay on the jury. That was on the note as well. So regardless of the motivation for being less than completely forthcoming on June 10, it appears to me that what happened is that she had second thoughts overnight and then decided to come clean, if you will, the next day and tell me that this was a shooting. I appreciate that she told me that the next day, but it still causes me concern that she didn't tell me that the first day. And so I'm not comfortable relying on her representation that she can still be fair and impartial and that her brother-in-law's incident will not affect her in any way in this trial. This, to me, stands in stark contrast to my finding of credibility with respect to Juror 673 during an unrelated earlier incident. I had no doubt during that earlier incident that Juror 673 was being completely honest and candid with me, and I was very comfortable relying on her answers to all my questions. I mentioned that the prosecution had no objection to the dismissal. Given all the circumstances I have discussed and given the nature of this case, I'm not willing to risk allowing a juror that I'm not completely confident can be fair and impartial make any decisions in this case. So she will be dismissed. So let's bring Juror 901 at this time, please. The record should reflect that Juror 901 is now present in the courtroom. Good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to let you know that I have decided to excuse you. So I'm going to go ahead and excuse you at this time. I have some concerns about your brother-in-law's situation and how that may affect you in this case. I also, I know that you told me that you are sure that you can still be fair and impartial. You weren't completely forthcoming with me the first day. The second day, you told me that this was a shooting. The first day, you said it was an accident.
Yeah, my family said it was just a major accident and he was in the hospital. That's all they told me.
All right.
And I didn't find out until that night.
All right. Thank you very much for your service. I appreciate that. I'm going to give you the same instruction that I've given the other jurors who have been dismissed. You cannot talk about anything to any of the jurors in this case.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
I do.
In fact, you cannot have any contact with any of them. Do you understand?
I do.
And I have prohibited the media from talking to any jurors until the proceedings are completed, even if the jurors are discharged before then. Do you understand that?
I do.
And so I'm requesting the same thing of you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the record should reflect that Juror 901 has now exited the courtroom. I have a note that Juror number 155 wishes to speak with me this morning, so let's bring him in, please.
Before we do that, may we approach briefly?
Yes. Okay, let's bring in juror number 155, please. The record should reflect that juror number 155 is present in the courtroom. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
It's my understanding that you wanted to talk to me. What's on your mind?
I just realized on Friday when I made my doctor's appointment, I make them on Fridays, that we're off, anyway, that I was in a location that was mentioned in the trial,
What location was that?
which was the Anschutz Medical Center.
Okay,
But I was only there for the doctor's appointment.
all right. And did you go out of your way to make any observations or to do any investigation at all?
Not at all.
All right. Anything about that experience that in any way affects your ability to be fair and impartial in this trial?
No.
Anything about that experience that you think affects your ability and willingness to make all decisions in this case based only on the evidence presented in the trial and the instructions of law that I give you?
No.
Do you have any concerns at all?
No.
Are you planning to schedule any other appointments there?
I already have one scheduled for that 4 weeks from now when we're off on that Friday, but it's just my podiatrist, and I don't visit any other parts of the campus.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to ask that you treat it the same way, that when you're there, that you just take care of business in terms of the doctor's appointment that you have, and that you not go out of your way to make any observations or to investigate anything or to talk to anyone about anything related to the case.
Yes.
Okay? All right. Let me have you step out for just a moment. I'm glad that you told me about it. You did the right thing. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't set the alarm off. All right, the record should reflect that juror number 155 has now exited the courtroom. Is there any other record that the people are asking me to make, or are there any other questions that people want me to ask, or do the people have any requests for me at this time?
No, Your Honor.
Same questions with respect to the defense. Any more questions that you want me to ask juror 155? Any other record that you want me to make, or any requests that you're making to the court with respect to this juror at this time?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, let me see if I had anything else. I don't have anything else. Do the parties have anything that we need to talk about before we bring the jury in?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Hicks?
Your Honor, I do have two issues for the court with regard to a potential witnesses that are coming up this afternoon. I realize it's almost 10 o'clock and we haven't brought the jury in. I'm happy to wait and do this at lunch, or I can address it now, whatever the court prefers.
How long do you think it'll take you?
5 minutes.
Well, why don't we do it now, so it gives you some time to think about it?
Okay. Your Honor, first I'm going to make an objection to a video that is likely to come into evidence. It's a video that the court has already seen, which is the subject matter of Motion D-275A, and I spoke with Mr. Orman this morning and let him know that I would put this formal objection on the record. And this is with regard to issues beyond what we raised in D-275A. We object to the introduction of that video on both federal and state due process under the 5th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution.
Let me stop you for just a moment,
Certainly.
Ms. Hicks, and I apologize for interrupting you.
It's okay.
I'm familiar with that video, and I'm familiar with D-275A, so given that, I'm comfortable having the argument during the lunch hour. So
Okay.
let's table it. It'll
Okay.
give you more time, you won't feel rushed, and then the people can respond, and I won't feel rushed either as we discuss it, okay?
Okay, and there are also some jail records that the people may introduce, probably, I'm imagining at this point tomorrow, but that will be a short issue, and I can also include that at the lunch hour.
All right, let's do that. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that we need to talk about on behalf of the defense before I bring the jury in? Mr. King? All right, thank you. Let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated. The record should reflect that the jury is not present in the courtroom. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Did you have a good weekend? Good, I'm glad. You may notice, or you may have noticed already, that we've lost another juror. Juror 901 has been excused. Please don't guess or speculate about why that is. And the same advisement that I gave you with respect to the first three jurors who were dismissed applies to her. You cannot have any contact with her about anything, and she cannot have any contact with you. And I told her that when she left, and she told me that she would not make any contact with any of you until the trial proceedings are completed. At the end of the session on Thursday of last week, I defer ruling on a couple of exhibits, P-TR-2074 and 2075. I have decided to allow 2074, so that has been admitted. I have rejected the request to admit 2075, so that's not admitted, okay? Just wanted to bring you up to speed on that. All right, with that, let's have the prosecution call its next witness, please. Ms. Teach McGuire.
Pierce O'Farrell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names?
My full name is Pierce Gerard O'Farrell. First name P-I-E-R-C-E. Gerard is G-E-R-A-R-D, and O'Farrell is O''F as in Frank, A-R-R-I-L-L.
All right, Ms. Teach McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Were you at the Century 16 movie theater in Aurora, Colorado on July 19th and 20th of 2012?
I was.
Could you please tell the jury who you went to the movies with that day?
I went with my friend Carrie Rotman.
Why did you two decide to go to the movie theater?
Just big Batman fans. We had made plans the weekend before, just kind of offhand, let's go check it out, and then didn't really talk the rest of the week, and Thursday I sent him a text and just kind of last minute said, "You still want to go?" And he said, "Yeah," and so we decided to go.
What time did you arrive at the movie theater that evening?
I got there probably about 25 minutes before the scheduled showtime.
What did you do when you arrived at the theater?
We got there. Kerry had bought tickets online, so he got them from the kiosk, and then just got some popcorn and a Coke, and went into the theater.
Where did you find seats in the theater that night?
When we walked in, the theater was completely packed, basically. And we turned and looked up to the stadium seating, and about 3 or 4 rows up, there were 2 seats right on the aisle. So we kind of thought we had, hit the jackpot, and we sat down, and Carrie sat in the very aisle seat, and I sat in the second seat in.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1151.
Yes.
Do you recognize that diagram?
I do.
Does it fairly and accurately represent where you sat in the theater on the night of July 20th of 2012, and what else do you recall seeing that night in the theater?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time I'd move for the admission of People's Exhibit 1151.
Is there any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, it is admitted and it may be published.
All right, and I'm not going to ask to publish at this time. Thanks, Your Honor. Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I ask Mr. O'Farrell to meet me at the 3D model?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. O'Farrell, if I could ask you to grab that cordless microphone that's up there. Turn that on for me. I'm going to have you stay back here so we don't block the jury's view.
Okay.
All right, could you please show the jury where you and Mr. Rotman were seated?
So we entered right here, walked up, and honestly, I don't know the exact row. It was one of these 3 rows here. Carrie was on the aisle seat, and then I was in the second seat over.
Do you know who was seated on the other side of you?
I do. A girl by the name of Jansen Young, and then next to her was a young man by the name
Objection
of...
calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, he knew the identification of the people who were seating next to him.
Why don't you establish foundation?
All right, how did you come to meet the people who were seated next to you?
Well, I sat down, and I sat down next to her and saw her, and then didn't really speak to her, but a couple days after the shooting in the hospital, they
I
were...
object at this point to 401, 402, 403.
Sustained.
All right, so you and Mr. Rotman were seated right here. Please tell the jury about what happened to you in the movie theater that night.
Okay, well, the first thing I saw was the canister go flying across the screen. And I don't know how I knew, but immediately I knew that it was tear gas. I mean, it just seemed so obvious to me. Then immediately my eyes went to see where that came from, and I saw the shooter emerge from here. And he was wearing a gas mask. He was wearing armor from head to toe. He was holding a big gun in his hand, and honestly, I just kind of froze in that second. And I watched him open fire into the front rows there. And, he fired a couple rounds, and my immediate thought was, I just got to get down. So I looked over to Carrie and saw that he was looking around kind of to the left, and not, I could tell he didn't see where the shooter was or anything. I just said, we got to get down. And we laid down in front of our seats. His feet were in the aisle. My feet were pointing this way. And so we were kind of head to head. And the shots got closer and closer. And honestly, in that moment, all I could do was pray. I laid there and I prayed. And
Objection at this point.
Overruled.
What do you recall after that, Mr. O'Farrell?
So the first shot I took were fragments from a shotgun that hit me in the left toes. And it really felt like it just blew my toes off. And at that point, I kind of curled up in the fetal position. And then Carrie told me that he had been shot.
For hearsay.
What did you do in response to what Mr. Rotman had told you?
All right, the objection is sustained. Go ahead, answer the next question.
I told him that I'm shot too. And at that moment, Carrie and I were laying like this. And then I remember looking up and seeing the laser bouncing around.
And could you
And then-
describe for the jury what you actually saw when you said that you saw a laser bouncing around?
It was like a laser pointer, a little green dot, just bouncing around. I assume it was the sight from his pistol. And then almost instantly, I felt the next shot. He had taken aim and he shot with the pistol round.
Calls for speculation. Sure. Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
And what did you actually see the shooter doing?
Well, I didn't look up at that moment, but I knew that I had been shot. The bullet entered in my arm, shattered my humerus in half.
And Mr. O'Farrell, can I ask you to roll up your sleeve and show
Yeah.
the jury where it was that you were shot?
So a bullet entered right here. You can see the scar. It shattered my humerus in half, and it actually stayed into my bicep. I still carry that bullet today.
So after you had realized you'd been shot, what do you remember next in the theater?
Honestly, at that moment, it was just complete chaos. I remember round after round after round firing, and I really thought that I was going to die. I laid there, and I'd been shot 3 times at that point. I took another assault rifle round in my same left foot, and it was just round after round after round. It seemed like it was going on for an eternity.
How many shots do you think you heard in the theater that night?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it felt like hundreds. It really did.
At any point in time, did you have an opportunity to look through the seats and see the shooter?
Not after the very first time that I saw him. At that point, I wanted to keep my head down, my eyes closed, and literally just pray. That's all I could do.
And when you saw the shooter in the beginning, could you describe for the jury what the shooter's demeanor was like and what the shooter was doing?
Well, it seemed like slow motion. I mean, he seemed very methodical. Because like I said, I watched him walk in, I watched him fire a couple of rounds, and I never heard him say anything. I never heard anything but the gun going off.
Could you see if the shooter was holding the gun with one hand or two?
He was holding it with 2. I believe it was a shotgun.
All right. So after you were down on the ground, what else do you recall? How did you and Mr. Rotten get out of the theater?
Well, eventually the shots stopped, and Kerry was the first one to peek his head up, and he said, "Let's make a run for it." So we stood up from our spot in the ground, and honestly, gosh, it took all the strength I had just to stand up. And at that point, I believed I'd been shot in the back because the pain just radiated through my entire left side of my body. And I stood up, and Kerry was in front of me, and he made his way down the stairs, and I kind of followed him. But right about this last stair, I just kind of tripped over it and collapsed face first right by the bottom of the stairs there. And honestly, at that point, I didn't have the strength to get up again. And Kerry was shaking me, saying, "Pierce, we got to go, we got to go." And honestly, in my mind, I thought, man, I've been...
Object at this point to 401, 402, 403.
Overruled?
What were you thinking?
And I was thinking, this is it. I mean, I'm going to die here. And I remember thinking, Kerry, you just get out and save yourself. And since I wasn't responsive to him, he exited the theater. And I just laid there. I laid there and I waited. At one point, I felt that dark presence standing over me.
I'm going to object at this point.
Sustained. Steve McGuire after next.
Did you actually see a figure standing over you?
No, I was laying face down with my eyes closed, and I could hear the sounds.
Sustained.
What sounds could you hear?
People screaming, people calling 911. I could hear the movie still running. I heard someone shout out, "Turn off the movie." And I just laid there.
Were you eventually able to get out of the theater?
I was. When the police officers arrived, the first thing I remember was they kneeled down, they had gas masks on, and they had some kind of wand that I
I'm going to
assumed...
object at this point to cumulative to the other testimony we heard from first responders in 401, 402, 403.
Ask another question. I will sustain it for now. Ask what happened with respect to him.
Right, so could you describe for her how it was that officers got you outside the theater?
Well, first the officers kneeled down, and they turned me around on my back, and I had an officer at my head, an officer at my feet, and they tried to lift me up. But when they lifted me up by this arm, I mean, the arm was split in half, and the pain was so intense that I kind of shouted, "Hold on, drop me," and I think I can try and walk. And so an officer got on each side of me, lifted me up, and I kind of hopped my way out. They carried me this way and out the same exit that the shooter had entered.
What happened when you got on the outside of those doors?
Well, the first thing I'll never forget is the
Judge, I'm going to
the
interrupt
rifle.
an objection to relevance as to the environment outside the theater.
Sustained.
And were you placed on the sidewalk outside the theater?
I was placed right on the sidewalk.
All right.
Just for the record, it was sustained under Rule 403, not on relevance grounds. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have any more questions for you at this time. If you could take your seat
Okay.
back on the witness stand. Thank you.
Jury.
Overruled.
I sustained a fractured humerus in the left arm from a .40 caliber pistol round. I sustained, I guess I'd call it trauma, from shotgun pellets that went into my left toes and cut them up very severely. And then I sustained another wound in the left side of my foot from a assault rifle round.
Did you have any injuries to your chest?
And then I have some fragments of shotgun shrapnel in my chest as well.
Your Honor, if I may approach Mr. O'Farrell with what's been marked as People's Exhibits 2541, 2543, 4587, and 4591.
Yes.
Mr. O'Farrell, do you recognize those photographs?
I do.
Do they fairly and accurately represent the injuries you sustained on July 20th of 2012?
They do.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move for the admission of People's Exhibits 2541, 2543, 4587, and 4591.
Is there any objection, Ms. Spengler?
Your Honor, there is an objection to 4591. In addition to the prior objections made to 4591, we'd also add cumulative to the testimony of Mr. O'Farrell as well.
Can I see those pictures, please? P-TR-2541, 2543, and 4587 are all admitted without objection. Was 4591 subject to amended order D98B?
It was.
All right, for the reasons stated in that order, the objection to P-TR-4591 is overruled, and in terms of the additional objection, I find that the probative value of the evidence is not substantially outweighed by the unnecessary presentation of cumulative evidence, and so that objection is overruled. So P-TR-4591 is also admitted, and all of them may be published. Here you go. Thank
If I
you.
could please have 2541. Right, this is a photograph of you in the hospital on July 20th of 2012.
It is.
If I please have 2543. Please describe for the jury what we see here.
That looks like the left side of my leg. It's bandaged up just from extra shrapnel that kind of went in there.
If I could please have 4587. Please describe for the jury what we see here.
And that's my left foot. And that there's shotgun shrapnel. It was more, the damage was more on the bottom side of the foot than it was on the top.
And what happened on the bottom side of the foot?
Just buckshot, a lot of pellets went in there and just tore the foot up. It needed to be bandaged and wrapped, and that skin took a good 4 months to heal.
Point, Your Honor. 4014 is
Sustain.
If I could please have 4591. Right, you could describe for the jury what we see here.
So the bar in my arm was external fixator. They had to drill 2 pins in my elbow, 2 pins in my shoulder in order to put the bone back together. The area got infected about 6 weeks after.
Sustain.
All right, thank you very much. I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you have any cross-examination, Ms. Spengler?
No.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions for this witness. May this witness be released from his subpoena?
Please, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No.
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
You can leave those with Ms. Stitch McGuire. Thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Jarrell Brooks.
Good morning. Could I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Jarrell Nielsen Brooks, Jarrell Nielsen, Nielson, Brooks, Brooks.
Ms. Stitch McGuire, you may proceed.
Good morning.
Morning.
Were you at the Century 16 movie theater on July 19th and 20th of 2012 in Aurora, Colorado?
I was.
Why'd you go to the movies that night?
I just regular night wanted to go to catch a movie with my friend,
And who'd you go to the movies with?
Jordan Witt.
When did you get the tickets for the movie theater?
She actually got them before me. I went a little bit early, around 10:30, to meet up with her.
What did you two do when you got to the movie theater that night?
We got there a little early, so we were just passing the time, just playing some games on our phone a little bit, having a conversation.
Where did you two find seats in the movie theater?
I was closer to the back of the theater. I want to say about 6 rows out, roughly.
And if you're facing the movie theater screen, are you closer to the left side or the right side?
Closer to the left.
I wonder if I may approach Mr. Brooks with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1115.
Yes.
Do you recognize that diagram?
I do.
Does it fairly and accurately represent what you recall happening in the theater on July 20th of 2012?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, at this time I would move for the admission of People's Exhibit 1115.
Any objection?
Your Honor.
Without objection, P-TR-1115 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask for Mr. Brooks to join me at the 3D model.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Brooks, if you grab that microphone, please. All right, I'm going to have you stay back here so we can not block the jury's view. Mr. Brooks, could you please show the jury where you were seated that day?
I was roughly sitting around about right here, I want to say.
Right, and where was your seat?
It was about 4 rows over,
Right, and could you show the jury where Jordan's seat was?
right next to mine, so the seat right here.
Okay. Please tell the jury about what happened in the movie theater that night.
Like I said, it started as a regular night. Me and Jordan were having a conversation, and during our conversation, we were watching the previews of the movie. And prior to the movie starting, we actually had to scoot over at one point. There was a family that was actually coming up to where we were seated at, and they actually sat directly to my left where we were seated. And during the movie, the previews were going, the family was right next to us. We were actually exchanging conversation casually between the two of them. And it was just seemed like a regular night at first, and then as the movie got started, about 15 minutes in is when things started to change.
Tell the jury about what happened at that point.
From that point is when the canister was originally thrown. At first I thought it was just a prank, to tell you the truth. It seemed like it was possibly a cherry bomb, or just some kids just acting out a little bit.
And did you have a chance to actually see that canister?
I did not.
Okay. What do you recall happening after that?
After the canister was thrown, that's actually when the explosion went off from the canister and the loud pop went off. Immediately after that was when the first gunshot went off directly to my right, towards the right side of the screen.
Did you actually see the shooter?
Not physically. I saw a rough silhouette of what this shooter looked like, but I didn't see his face directly.
And were you able to see the direction of where the flash went off in the theater?
I was.
And please show the jury where that was.
I was roughly around this area where the screen was at.
Did you notice anything else about the shooter or the guns at that point in time?
I could definitely tell it needed 2 hands for the gun to be carried, and I saw him physically as far as his outline of what he looked like.
Right. Any other description that you could give the jury about what you saw from the shooter?
Definitely wearing dark clothing. I could tell it was a male, around roughly 5'10", 6 foot, a decent build for sure.
What do you recall happening after you heard that first shot?
The first shot, I was still a little lethargic of what I was seeing, to tell you the truth. I wasn't sure what was going on. It wasn't until the shot directly afterwards when I realized there was actually gunshots going off.
What did you do after you realized gunshots were going off?
The second I realized gunshots were going off is when I actually proceeded to duck behind the actual seats themselves, and that's when I actually noticed Jordan was doing the same thing, and that's when I actually realized that there was something going on in the theater.
Did you show the jury where it was that you were ducking down behind the seats in your...
Oh, so where I was at, I was definitely around this area, ducking behind it, trying to have a good view of what was going on.
Do you recall how your body was positioned and how Jordan's body was positioned at the time?
I was definitely on my knees at that point, in a crawling position, and she was directly behind me doing the same.
What do you recall happening when you were down on the ground?
From that point is when I was kind of looking around to see what was going on. I turned back to see where she was at, and I noticed that she was doing the same thing. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was, and of course she was crying at the moment. And that's when I said we have to go, and we actually proceeded to make our way towards the aisle.
Please tell the jury about how you physically did that.
So we were ducked down, of course. I was kind of looking up to see what was going on, to kind of get a trace of where the shooter was.
What could you see?
At that point, I saw the flashes. I heard the pops going off at the time, but I was kind of figuring out where he was based off the flashes I saw.
Where were the flashes at that point in time?
Again, it was around this area.
So after you ducked up or peeked up and saw that, what do you recall doing next?
From that point, we continued to head towards the aisle, and that's actually when I bumped into a young lady and 2 kids.
All right. How young were these kids that you bumped into?
The kid was there was a young boy who was around about 3 or 4 months. The young girl was about 4 years old.
What happened when you bumped into that family?
The second I bumped into him is when the young lady actually turned to me and she told me it was just me and my 2 kids.
All right. So you noticed it was her and her 2 kids.
I did.
What?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
I apologize. What did you do after you noticed the woman and the 2 children?
From that point, when I noticed them, I was kind of making a split decision from that point. There was a lot going on through my mind at that point, but that's when I actually tried to guard them and lead them towards the aisle, trying to shield them at the same time.
And when you say they, you're talking about the children.
Yes.
What do you recall doing?
At that point, I was, holding on to her and the kids at the same time. We were trying to crawl our way towards the aisle without actually physically being affected by the shootings themselves.
Were you all still on the ground crawling? Or
We were.
Okay. What happened while you guys were crawling?
So we were calling at that point. I was trying to keep track of them at the same time as far as the shooting as well. And at one point, once we actually got to the end of the aisles, when I looked up one more time to see where the shooter was at, and we actually tried to make a break for it then.
Were you able to see where the shooter was at when you peeked up that last time?
I was.
And where was the shooter?
Exact same place in this area.
Okay. How was it that you tried to make a break for it?
From that point, I actually tried to lift them up. At the same time, she was getting up, holding one of the children while I was holding on to the other one. We were getting up at that point, and before we can actually physically get up, I actually immediately collapsed at that point.
Why did you collapse at that point?
From that point is when I actually turned on my back and realized I was actually shot in my left thigh from there.
On your left thigh, is that what do you recall the feeling of what happened when you got shot?
It was definitely a lot of pain initially. It was a lot of adrenaline going on, so I didn't feel the huge effects. I definitely could tell that I was shot. There was a lot of numbness in that leg, so I couldn't feel it.
So what happened physically when you collapsed?
From that point, I just remember turning on my side and just crying out very loudly, and from there I was just kind of trying to get back into, realizing she was there, helping her out, still trying to get her out to the aisle and to the exit.
And when you said she, who are you talking about?
Patricia.
And is that the woman who was with you next to the two kids?
Yes, it was.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
He said yes, it was. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What do you recall doing next?
From that point is when I actually turned back onto my knees and proceeded to help her out to the aisle. We went a little bit further, and she actually was able to make it out, but I stayed for a little bit longer.
And why did you stay for a little bit longer?
From that point, she seemed like she had a lot more strength than me at the point, so it was hard for me to actually physically get up. So I waited a little bit longer to see if I could make a break for it when the shots seemed less consistent.
And what were the shots sounding like to you in the theater at the time?
Definitely a lot of loud pops. I can definitely make out the sounds of gunshots for sure.
How were you able to finally get out of the theater?
From that point, is actually when I was in the aisle. From that point, went out the back exit toward the emergency exit into the back, and there was actually some stairs that were in the back leading towards where the projector room was at, and I actually went down those stairs leading to the front exit in the front of the theater.
Was your friend Jordan with you at that point in time?
She was not.
All right, at this point I don't have any further questions for you at the model. You can go back and take your seat at the witness stand. Thank you. What happened after you made your way down the stairs to the lobby?
Making my way down the stairs was definitely not an easy task. I was shot in my left leg, so it was hard for me to actually physically walk down the stairs. There were people still trying to get down the exact same stairs I was. So as I was walking down the stairs, I was trying to hold on to the railing while not trying to fall or collapse myself.
Did you make it down the stairs?
I did.
What did you do after you got down the stairs?
After I actually physically got down the stairs is when I ran outside the main exit. After I exited the theater, that's when I was actually trying to seek help out to anyone who could notice.
Were you able to get help?
Eventually I did. At one point I actually noticed there was some kids around my age at the time.
Objection 403.
Sustained.
Were you transported to a medical facility?
I was.
All right. How were you transported?
Through an ambulance.
Do you recall if there was anyone else in the ambulance with you?
There was 2 other witnesses and 2 other paramedics.
What hospital did they take you to?
Denver Health.
What injuries did you sustain as a result of the shooting?
There was an injury shot to my left thigh.
And were you able to physically see that wound?
I was.
Please describe for the jury how large your wound was.
It was pretty large. My hand's pretty big, so I can actually physically put my whole hand in my wound.
And could you go ahead, please, and raise your hand and show the jury how big your hand is? Right, thank you. Your Honor, at this time I would like to approach Mr. Brooks with what's been marked as People's Exhibits 2012 and 2013.
Yes, you may.
I have no objection to these exhibits.
Are you moving their admission, Ms. Teach McGuire?
Your Honor,
All right, without objection, they're both admitted and they may both be published.
if I could please have 2012. This is a picture of you at the hospital on July 28th of 2012.
Yes, it is.
If I can please have 2013. Right, please describe for the jury what you see here.
So that was the night of the shooting that happened, and it was actually the night where I was first in the hospital. And as you can see on my left eye is actually where I was shot, and a little above you can see definitely about 50 to 60 sit-ups a day after that as well.
All right, we don't actually have any pictures of your wound from that night. The police officers were not able to take them underneath the bandages. Right, I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. Will this witness be released from his subpoena?
Please, Your Honor.
Is there any objection?
Without objection.
All right, thank you, sir. Call your next witness, please.
Joseph Squarea.
Good morning. Could I have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, please be seated. Tell us your full name for the record, please, and spell your first, middle, and last names.
Joseph Squarea, Joseph, last name Squarea, Skwira.
Mr. Edson, you may proceed.
What do you do for a living?
I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Sportsman's Guide.
What is the Sportsman's Guide?
Sportsman's Guide is a multi-channel retailer.
What are some of the items sold by the Sportsman's Guide?
We offer products to the outdoor enthusiast.
Does your company have an online presence?
Our online sales are roughly 75 to 80% of our total sales.
Those online sales, can they be to the general public?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to June 13th, 2012. First off, were you employed with the Sportsman's Guide back during that time period?
Yes.
On or around June 13th, 2012, were you... Actually, let me retract that question and start with a different one. Are you a custodian of records for the Sportsman's Guide?
Yes.
Do you have knowledge and background related to all records concerning customer transactions?
Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to view a customer transaction from June 13th, 2012 from Aurora, Colorado?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
You may.
I've handed you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 650, 650. Can I have you look through that and tell me when you've had an opportunity to flip through those pages?
Yes.
Do you recognize those documents?
Yes.
In general, what are those documents?
These documents are order records related to that particular order.
Is there a particular customer associated with those records?
Yes.
Who is that customer?
Mr. James Holmes.
Is there a date associated with that transaction?
The date is 6/13/2012.
As a custodian of records for the Sportsman's Guide, are you familiar with records such as these?
Yes.
Are those records computerized records?
Yes.
Are the entries contained in those records made in the regular and ordinary course of the Sportsman's Guide's business?
Yes.
Those who participate in making those records, are they acting in the routine and ordinary course of the Sportsman's Guide's business?
Yes.
The input procedures required to make those records, are they done so accurately?
Yes.
The entries that are a part of that record and make that record, were they done so within a reasonable time after the actual transaction?
Yes.
From the Sportsman's Guide perspective, do you rely on information inputted by the customer on the other end of the transaction?
Yes. On web orders.
Exactly. This was a web order?
Yes.
Okay. The information that's contained within that record, has it been transmitted by a reliable person such as yourself that has knowledge of those records?
Yes.
The overall information contained within People's Exhibit 650, are those kept and maintained in the ordinary and normal course of the Sportsman's Guide's business?
Yes.
Does the Sportsman's Guide receive, maintain, and rely on the information in a totality of the records contained in People's Exhibit 650?
Yes.
I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 650, Your Honor.
Is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, P-TR-650 is admitted and may be published.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
You may.
Sir, in just a moment, we're going to place some of the records on the large screen TVs. You should be able to see it on the computer screen in front of you. Please tell me if you do not. What are we looking at here, sir?
This is a customer order.
Fair to say the customer name and address information as well as phone numbers in the top half of this document?
Yes.
Is there also a date of birth associated with this?
Yes.
How does the Sportsman's Guide obtain the date of birth?
The customer enters it on web orders.
And is this in fact a web order?
Yes.
Email address, is that also put in by the customer?
Yes.
I see down there, it says trans, time, date, 6/13/12. Is that the date of this transaction?
Yes.
All right, if we can go to the bottom of that page, please. What was the final price of this transaction?
The merchandise was $1,160.79. We charged shipping of $19.99 for a total order of $1,181.77.
We can go to the next page, please. Fair to say this is a continuation of the first page?
Yes.
What do you call these documents?
I would call them customer order documents or records.
We can go down to the bottom, please. And for the record, we published the bottom portion of the second page. If we could have the third page, please. And is this a continuation of the previous two documents?
Yes.
We could have the fourth page, please. What is this document?
This is a screen print of the customer order within our ERP system.
Same customer, same address, same information you previously testified to,
Yes.
as in the other documents as well?
Yes.
Same total amount with the shipping of $1,181.77?
Yes.
We can go to the next page, please. So on this page, does it actually show what was ordered online?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what was ordered, please?
We ordered a number of products. The first item is a 100-round AR-15 drum mag. The second item is 500 rounds of .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, 180 grain, presumably pistol ammo. The third item is 250 rounds of Remington 12-gauge ammunition. The next item is hearing protection. The next item is an AR-15 mag, 40-round mag. And that's all that's on that page.
Does it continue to a next page?
Yes.
If we could have the next page, please. What is this information?
That is the shipping information. It shows that all the merchandise order went out on two separate shipments, both on June 16th, 2012, along with the shipping route. It went via UPS along with tracking numbers.
We could have the next page, please. What is this information?
Those are customer comments within our system. It shows Number one, that we did offer him a Buyers Club pitch. Number two, that we sent him a shipping confirmation to his email address. And I'm not sure what three is. I know number four is we sent him a customer survey to predict our net loyalty score.
Is that something you normally do with online orders?
Yes.
Judge, can I have one moment, please?
Yes?
Thank you, Judge. We have on the screen here, I believe, the second page of the continuation. Can you talk to the jury about this, what was also ordered?
Also ordered was an AR-15 40-round magazine, beam shot laser sight, and 820 rounds of .223 55 grain full metal jacket ammunition.
Your Honor, may I have one moment, please?
You may.
Nothing additional, thank you.
Ms. Higgs, do you have any cross-examination?
I do not, Your Honor.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions for this witness. May this witness be released from his subpoena, Mr. Edson?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, thank you. All right, members of the jury, it's almost 10:40, and I know we haven't been at this for very long, but I need to give my court reporter and the rest of my staff a break. We were working this morning, did some things that we had to do outside your presence. Again, you know, as I've mentioned before, that sometimes I have to talk to the attorneys about administrative things or scheduling issues or legal things outside your presence. So please don't draw any inferences from that, all right? It's just part of the process. Let's take our morning break. Keep in mind all the advisements I've been giving you with respect to your conduct when you're not in the courtroom. They apply during the break. I'll see you in approximately 20 minutes. Thank you. It's like the jury has exited the courtroom. Let's go ahead and take our morning morning break, unless there's something we need to talk about.
Judge, we can do it when we come back. I just want to draw the attention to some upcoming exhibits when we come back from the break.
All right, what exhibits are those?
347, which is the foundation for the Hotmail DVD. We're just going to seek the same procedure that we did with the Gmail, establishing foundation, but actual emails themselves would be sought through Special Agent Phelps later on a different date. And then, Judge, I brought this to the court's attention a while back, but as a reminder, I've got some witnesses coming up from both Gander Mountain and Bass Pro Shops, and I showed counsel this, but just based upon how law enforcement collected a lot of the documents, they were all kind of put together in envelopes and such, and for chain of custody purposes, it made it difficult. And the long and the short of it is that we created kind of bulky exhibits that have some intermixed Gander Mountain and Bass Pro Shops. So my intent is to lay foundation kind of little bit by little bit and then ultimately publish once everything hopefully comes in. But I want to bring that to the court's attention.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Spengler, I think at some point you're going to let me know what emails you object to once we get to that point, right? In terms of the Hotmail emails. That's right. Okay, great. Anything on behalf of the defense at this time? No? No. Okay, I'll see you after the break. Thank you. The court will be in recess.